Okay, so the DC Cinematic Universe has been pretty fraught with disappointments ever since Man of Steel back in 2013. The mega franchise has struggled to find its footing next to Marvel's success over the years. While I'm certainly not the biggest DC fan, DC does have my personal favorite superhero across the genre. I enjoy Batman so much because I love the dark undertones and plays on morality. Not to mention, it has some of my favorite villains. So, I was mildly excited in 2016 when Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice was released. We were going to see a new interpretation of Batman, and with Captain America: Civil War released that same year, we were getting to see our favorite superheroes duke it out amongst themselves. Really interesting concept, and something we hadn't really seen in superhero movies to that point. I wanted to rewatch Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition, to see where it went wrong, and if a few changes could have altered the fate of the prestigious Snyderverse. So right off the bat, the movie starts off with Thomas and Martha Wayne's death scene. Look, I get that this is one of the most pivotal moments in making Batman who he is, but come on, how many times do we need to see this in a Batman movie? There's nothing new here. We get it. Zack Snyder just wants to throw in his own rendition of the greatest Batman hits. The only important thing in this scene is that Bruce's mom's name is Martha. This will become important in the movie later, and if you know, you know. Then we fast forward to Metropolis during Superman's battle with General Zod from Man of Steel, but this time from Bruce's perspective. To be honest, this whole sequence is really cool. Despite the fact that the city is being destroyed and the employees at Wayne Enterprises Metropolis can't make an emergency decision to evacuate without calling Daddy Bruce for permission first.
Jack, listen to me. I want you to get everyone out of the building right now. You understand?
Let's go. Come on, start moving now.
What a good, diligent workforce they have. Seeing this battle from Bruce Wayne's perspective does something that I think is really cool. It sets up Superman as kind of a villainous character, or at the very least, one that people see as dangerous. The whole battle from the first movie would legitimately have killed thousands and thousands of bystanders. And it's interesting to see that that actually has some weight to it. It's perfectly logical that Batman would then see Superman as a threat. So we're off to the races, right? Not exactly. Though there's already resentment against Superman to say the least, Lex Luthor comes in and stirs the plot. Get it? Stirs the plot.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
But why was his presence necessary? I have literally no idea. In fact, I don't understand his motivations in this movie at all. He wants to pit Batman and Superman against each other, and he wants the alien technology from the wrecked spaceship, saying it's for
planetary security.
But really he just wants power, I'm guessing. This isn't really explicitly explained. He just kind of does it. He's a bad guy for bad guy's sake. While we're at it, let me talk a little bit about the casting of this movie. Henry Cavill did an excellent job as Clark Kent and Superman. Ben Affleck gives a more bitter and angry version of Batman and Bruce Wayne. Amy Adams as Lois Lane reprising her role, and Jeremy Irons as Alfred are also fantastic choices in their roles. Then there's Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor.
It's Cherry.
This is the quintessential definition of bad casting. Jesse Eisenberg exhibits nothing about what made Lex Luthor a great villain in the source material. He's essentially playing a comic book version of Mark Zuckerberg, but with the manic sociopathy turned up to 11. Now, Jared Leto got a lot of flack for his version of Joker in Suicide Squad and Justice League, and rightfully so. But here's an interesting thought. If Jesse Eisenberg and Jared Leto had swapped roles in this universe, I'd be very curious to see the results. Eisenberg's Lex Luthor feels like he's trying to be the unhinged psychopath that Joker can be. Jared Leto is trying to... well... I'm not really sure what Jared Leto is trying to do with the Joker, but he can absolutely play a rich psychopath. He did it in Blade Runner 2049. He plays calm, cool, and collected so much better than he plays a deranged psychopath. He's just trying too hard. Eisenberg Joker and Leto Luthor just as an alternate timeline thing. It might work, actually. There's also this whole subplot with Lois Lane going to Africa and kryptonite being recovered from the crash site in the Indian Ocean and Lex Luthor getting his grubby hands on it. This is all relevant, I guess, but my God, is it boring and convoluted. And there's this Superman statue in Metropolis to commemorate all the people that died during Zod's attack. And this is where I get really confused. There's thousands upon thousands of deaths, leading to some, if not most people, being very wary about Superman's existence on Earth. And they want to commemorate the lives of those that were lost with this controversial figure? I get it, not the first controversial figure to have their own statue, and Superman has saved people in different ways, and Zod would have done some major damage on Earth, blah 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 blah, but come on. I see what Snyder is trying to do here by making the world darker and whatnot, but have it make some damn sense from time to time. It just doesn't add up. There's a scene between the Senator and Luthor, for instance, where Luthor references his father's painting and says, "Devils come from the sky."
That should be upside down. Now, we know better now, don't we? The devils don't come from hell beneath us, no. No, they come from the sky.
This is the only morsel we get of his motivation, but it doesn't justify why he feels this way. We don't really ever get to see why he has such disdain for Superman. Unless everyone has disdain for Superman. But clearly they don't, because they built a fucking monument in his honor. And then Clark Kent has the gall to say that Batman is a vigilante.
Civil liberties are being trampled on in your city. Good people living in fear.
I mean, I get it, sure, I guess technically he is, but then what the hell are you? You're a supreme being and a metahuman, and suddenly you get to determine what is right and wrong for a whole civilization when you literally inadvertently killed thousands of people because of some baggage that you brought with you? I just don't get it. It's so uneven.
Daily Planet criticizing those who think they're above the law is a little hypocritical, wouldn't you say? Considering every time your hero saves a cat out of a tree, you read a puff piece editorial about an alien who, if he wanted to, could burn the whole place down. There wouldn't be a damn thing we could do to stop it.
The moral exploration in this movie is like a sailboat in a hurricane. The movie even uses real-life commentators to try to stress its moral flux. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Jon Stewart, Charlie Rose, Anderson Cooper, and Nancy Grace all make appearances on talk shows about the moral dilemma of Superman. I get that Snyder is trying to connect this to the real world, but really it just makes the point more unbelievable. It's an attempt at a shortcut to credibility without actually establishing any. Using real people to speak your points directly to the audience isn't world building, it's just lazy. Speaking of moral dilemmas, Batman kills in this movie. Yep, Batman kills people. Deliberately and intentionally. One of the only defining things about how he approaches fighting injustice is completely disregarded in this movie. If you're going to have moral dilemmas in this movie, you don't have to inject them. They're already there. Batman doesn't kill people. Superman has. Done. Their different ideologies, justifications, and backgrounds are ripe with conflict. Instead of warring ideologies, Snyder just turns it into one big testosterone-driven pissing contest.
And I see your Schwartz is as big as mine.
You don't need Lex Luthor to pit them against each other. The conflict you're highlighting between these characters is inherent. I mean, you even set this up at the beginning of the movie. You don't need to introduce Wonder Woman and set up the whole Justice League stuff to inflate the movie. Leave that stuff as Easter eggs or a post-credit scene or whatever. Leave the story alone. Adding in all these characters just waters down the conflict at hand. You can't fast-track the Marvel model. You have to rely on your strengths and what makes this universe different. You don't need to shove in the bizarre entrance of Doomsday or the ominous warning from Luthor that the parademons are coming.
The red capes are coming.
It completely undermines his motivations of
Planetary security.
that he mentioned earlier in the movie. Everything about this movie just sets up something and then undoes it later. Anyway, skipping ahead to the actual fight, the Battle Royale. Batman versus Superman. This fight is actually pretty cool, and they have a great back and forth. I really wish that there had been more than one battle between them. Replace all the superfluous characters like Luthor and Doomsday, and just lean into the conflict at hand. Really build it up. The first scene already sets up Superman as a villain, so take that angle. And that makes a really cool introduction for Batman in this universe. It's all really interesting. Taking a superhero that we normally equate to being morally good and showing the flip side of the coin. And you can expand on this in later movies in the DCEU, or even in Justice League. They can come to terms and still butt heads. That works just fine. but don't be lazy and do a scene that irrefutably bonds them at the last minute.
You're letting him kill Martha.
What does that mean? Why did you say that name?
Find him. Save Martha.
Please, stop!
Why did you say that name?
It's his mother's name! It's his mother's name.
I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
What's that make us?
Absolutely nothing.
When I first saw this in theaters, I literally exclaimed, "Fuck you." I couldn't help it. I dissociated for a second. What a lazy, contrived way to get Batman and Superman on the same team. Their mothers share the same name. You just instantly forget the threat and basis for your conflict because you bond over something so superficial. Talk about undermining both of your lead characters. Just dissolves them into nothing. And if you're dissolving Batman and Superman into nothing, then everything that comes after this movie, the whole Justice League, also means nothing. Because you've not built any credibility with your characters. Apparently just anything goes in this universe. And when it comes down to it, if we can't understand the justification, then we don't relate to it. Ultimately, Superman dies taking down Doomsday, and everyone is sorrowful about it. Luthor warns Batman that the Redcoats are coming.
The bell's already been rung. And they've heard it.
And then short circuits in the weirdest way.
Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding.
And then everything just points towards the Justice League. So, how do we fix this mess? I think you start by shrinking the scope down a bit. What is the purpose of this movie? Is it to set up Justice League? To introduce Batman to this universe? Or to shove a whole lot of characters in one movie and say that they're introduced so you can kind of play catch up to building an extended cinematic universe? To me, starting small and getting things right is more important here. Get rid of Doomsday and especially Lex Luthor as the central villains. Do something bold. Make Superman the villain and really pit the two against each other. You don't have to lean on other characters to justify their conflict. Let them have their own conflict. Get them to fight it out until they see eye to eye over their ideologies, not over something superficial. And if you want this world to be a darker version of the DC Comics, then you have to establish that tone. Being a darker interpretation is not just about a color palette, it's about themes and moral exploration. On that note, your moral take on those things has to be uniform and holistic. It can't be bouncing around whenever it's convenient for the plot. By establishing Batman and Superman, you get to really dive into what makes them tick and what bonds them. From there, you could have this develop throughout the DCEU and Justice League movies. They can always be butting heads and creating conflict with one another, while still bonding over the same principles. There are some cool ideas in here and some well-executed sequences. Batman's voice-altering technology is a really cool way to handle his voice changing.
Final fairy butterbar, final fairy butterbar, final fairy butterbar.
The Metropolis battle at the beginning of the movie sets up something really cool that ultimately isn't delivered on. The battle between Superman and Batman is actually made to feel evenly matched and executed really well. Then there's the warehouse scene with Batman that is so much fun to see him kicking ass, and even though he directly kills people and breaks any kind of moral code that the character has, it's a fantastic scene. But these are disparate moments on a sea of disappointment. It's too bloated with too many things going on. If the film were brought back to its basic tenets, it would be all the better for it, and so would the DCEU today. Well, what do you think? I know it's been a while since it came out, but what do you think about Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice? And what do you think of the Snyderverse overall? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and while you're at it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also check out my new Patreon page to show some love and support and check out some cool bonuses as well. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, and I live stream on Twitch on occasion, so check me out there too. The links are below in the description. If you have any suggestions for what movie or game I should tackle next, let me know. In the meantime, be well, and I'll see you in the next video.
Spicy!